Hey everybody, thanks for taking the time to join us today. We have a very exciting webinar with our partners Darktrace here. Excited to get really into it. Let's just take a couple minutes. I think people are joining as we speak. We'll probably start in a couple minutes. Thanks for the team here today, Rajesh, Spencer, Eric. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. New York's getting warm, so can't complain.
Yeah, I feel like the city is like kind of it's finding itself again after like the winter blues.
People forget how electric New York City is in the winter, and then all of a sudden you're back to just plans over plans. So it's exciting.
Yeah, excited for Summer Fridays too. Starting soon, hopefully.
No Summer Friday.
Yeah. Rajesh unfortunately is in the sweltering hot part of India right now. We were talking earlier this morning. 104 degrees is brutal, Rajesh.
Yeah, we are getting grilled here, so I think it's very hot, but I'm actually wearing this, so I'm actually in a AC room, so.
Business comes first, right? Yeah, you have to be all suited and booted, especially if you're in the office. So
yeah.
Right, I think people are joining. Let's just give it maybe a couple more minutes for everybody to make their way in, and then we can start. I'm so happy to have the Darktrace team here. Honestly, your guys' product has made my life so much easier. With all the, I was at your conference a couple weeks ago, and one of the speakers in the keynote, they were like, "We help you with all of the people's here's bane of existence, which is emails." And thanks to Darktrace, honestly, like all the spam emails that I had to manually delete before, automatically taken care of. My life is so much better with your product. So excited to have you guys on board today, and excited to see your demo as well.
Just before this, I met with your guys, the IT team at Korcomptenz. Of course, you guys have Darktrace yourselves, but yeah, he brought up a few points on the email side, and some of the things that the users don't really see that the IT teams are doing on the back end. So there's been a lot of success early on. So excited to hear that you're feeling it on the email side. Everyone's got a cleaner inbox.
Yeah, actually, your guys' product is so good that when I was registering for your conference, you guys blocked your own email. Actually, I was like, okay, guys, these guys definitely are hardcore about your rules that you set up, because I don't think I had gotten email communication from Darktrace before the conference, but it was good. Like, just recalled it, was able to get the information I needed. But it was like nice to have that like reassurance, like, okay, you guys take it.
Someone's protecting our house here. I know, it's good.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, great. I think we have some people in the room now. So I think we can get started right now. If we want to just present the deck really quickly and take it from there. Thanks everybody for taking some time out of your Wednesday morning to join us. We have a really exciting webinar planned right now. I want to give a quick overview of Korcomptenz. Don't want to take too much time from the great speakers that we have for you. But Korcomptenz is a technology transformation partner with over 20 years of experience helping our customers with our tech expertise. We've completed over 500 successful projects across different industries and different technology solutions. And some of our notable customers have been the largest flooring manufacturer and dental equipment manufacturers in the world, the leading fast food company in the world, the global leaders in photonics, manufacturing and distribution, and the leading fireplace and grill company in the market, among many others. And we truly have a global presence with offices and subsidiaries across the world, located throughout North America, the Middle East, Europe, and Australia. And as you can see, we have a couple of big partners that we work with. We are a Microsoft Gold partner. I think we've been a Gold partner with Microsoft for over 10 years, I think 15 years, in fact. And obviously Darktrace, one of our newest partners, we're very excited to be working with them along with other companies like AWS, ServiceNow, etc. And if we could go to the next slide, just very quickly, I want to present this and talk about how we structure our service portfolios and the way we achieve our customers' needs. We try to bucket these across 3 major competencies, which we label as engage, enable, and accelerate. With engage, we're focusing on your front-end technologies, This is related to customer engagement so that we can provide a 360-degree view of your customers. So this includes solutions like e-commerce, your web content management, your CRM applications, and some notable partners here are Salesforce, Kentico, Shopify, as well as others. Now with Enable, we focus on driving operational excellence by improving your business functions using industry-wide best practices and enterprise solutions like ERP implementation, support, and audit services, cloud migration and modernization, hybrid cloud management, and other things. Notable partners here, of course, are Darktrace. We're again very excited to be partners with and have present today. And along with them, we also work with Microsoft, ServiceNow, VMware, and some other companies. Now, the exciting part is Accelerate, where we aim to propel your business forward with cutting edge and emerging technologies like data and analytics and Gen AI, IoT, Internet of Things, edge computing, and more through partners like Microsoft Azure and Power BI, Snowflake, AWS, and others. So as you can see, we put these critical pieces together for you to really power your digital transformation. Now going to the next slide, here's a quick rundown of what we're going to discuss today. We're first going to give you some insight into Korcomptenz's services and our unique edge. We'll give you some context with the cybersecurity facts and threats in today's modern world. We'll inform you about the role of a strategic cloud partner and what you should look for, and run you through our layered approach for AI-driven cybersecurity. We'll present a quick case study for you on how we helped one of our clients. And after that, we're going to turn it over to Darktrace, to Spencer and Eric. They're going to walk us through AI in the enterprise security space. They'll give us a demo on next-gen cybersecurity and Darktrace cyber AI, and also run us through a cool case study that they have there. And then after that, we'll regroup. I'll inform you about some key takeaways from today's session. And we also have a very exciting special offer that we'll talk about at the end as well. So without further ado, I'd like to just introduce our panelists. First is Rajesh Kumar. Rajesh brings 22 years of experience in managing cloud infrastructure and cybersecurity for a bunch of Fortune 500 clients. He's held many various leadership roles, including the delivery director for cloud and business unit head. And he's very successful on driving solutions across various industries. Rajesh, thanks for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you, Rohan.
Next, I'd like to introduce Eric Jacquel. Eric is a enterprise account executive at Darktrace. He has over 5 years of experience in the cybersecurity industry, and also for the past 2 years, he's been focusing on working with mid-market to enterprise level organizations considering their AI-driven security solutions. Thanks for taking the time, Eric, to speak with us today. Next, I'd like to introduce Spencer Rosen. Spencer is a solutions engineer at Darktrace, where he serves as the email specialist for the US East region. In his role, Spencer links the sales and product teams to inform product development based on emerging threats and the evolving needs of the email market. Thanks all of you for making the time to be here today. Really appreciate it. So without further ado, I'd like to just pass over the floor to Rajesh, who's going to talk about Korcomptenz and give us some insight into cybersecurity in this industry.
Sure. Thank you, Rohan. And good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening. So thank you very much for joining us today. As Rohan introduced me, my name is Rajesh, and I lead the cloud infrastructure and cybersecurity practices here at Korcomptenz. I genuinely hope this session gives everyone here a meaningful insights, especially if you're someone who's actually in the journey of transforming your existing security solution at your organization. Without much delay, let me get into the presentation. But before getting into the actual cybersecurity related content, I would like to start this presentation by giving some insights about Core's unique offering, as all our offerings are actually integrated with an out-of-box cybersecurity solution. Precisely speaking, if you have an IT infrastructure environment, obviously everyone would actually have in their organization. And if you have an applications, no matter what kind of application it is, it might be your ERP, CRM, SAP, or any business specific application instances. And if you have data that resides across different sources, then core would actually help you to move any of your data or infra or applications to cloud in a very secure manner. And we can transform and modernize your applications, infra, and data through various digital engineering technologies with zero trust security architecture on the top. Lastly, as we are the leaders in managed services part, we manage your complete cloud or hybrid cloud environment by monitoring and remediating any operational issues on a day-to-day basis, on a 24/7 basis with an integrated command center model, right? So if you see on the bottom of the slide, as we are a strategic partner for Microsoft, AWS, SAP, Darktrace, and ServiceNow, we can unlock almost all potential benefits from these companies that makes our offering unique, effective, and at the same time, these benefits would further translate into major financial relief for the customers and faster time to market for any projects that I mentioned just now. If someone asks us what are all the digital technologies that we are strong at, we definitely have proven experience in all Microsoft, AWS, SAP suites like Fabric, Synapse, Data Lake, Azure, HANA, and many others. And most importantly, we offer industry-specific solution from Microsoft and AWS when it comes to any cloud solutions like Amazon Health Lake or SageMaker, Greengrass, Azure, Microsoft Health Data Services, Microsoft Forecast, etc. But let's dive into some cybersecurity facts now. In fact, if you actually see this slide, right, on the left side, the shares of attacks by industry 2024. So if I'm sitting in the audience representing retail or healthcare industries, I would be smiling because that chart shows my industry is not targeted by hackers as much, right? Those poor manufacturing and banking folks are getting hammered, but that doesn't mean we are actually safe. If you see the chart on the right, that is the impact that I would like to talk about, right? As we all know that no industry is immune to any cyber attacks. The cost that was actually incurred because of cybercrime in 2024 was tremendous, right? And that includes the cost spent by the business sectors whose volume was lower on the left side. Just because the volume of attacks might be lower in some sectors doesn't mean that the impact is any less severe. In fact, a single breach in a lower targeted industry can cripple the entire operations or cause irreversible damage. So the reason I'm sharing this information is not to brag or to show off how much cybersecurity research we have gathered. It's because if we don't know what the intruder is after, we can't protect what matters, right? Just like you would secure your home differently if you knew a thief was actually after you or your jewelry versus your documents, certain documents. So to defend effectively, we need to know who we are up against and what are all those threats that we are trying to defend against, right? So there are different types of threats. If you actually see on the bottom of this slide, I would have actually given some different types of threats and different types of bad actors who are trying to get access to our environment with different motives, right? So if you want to know their motives, the first thing is actually for money. Second is to disrupt your reputation. Third is actually for stealing your data, and sometimes it may be for revenge as well. And if you ask me, where are these bad actors sitting? I would say that they would be right inside your organization, sitting near you, or they may be completely from a different state, region, or country. Now, if we see the next slide, both are actually integrated, right? So let's explore why these actors, who these actors are, and what they are actually trying to get access to, right? So let's split it in a business sector wise. If you actually take the financial services sector, those are the prime targets for ransomware and data theft. And if you see manufacturing, the motive is actually all about they often suffer from IP theft and disruptions to operations. Healthcare, patient records are extremely valuable on the dark web. And if you take retail and e-commerce, they see frequent fraud and account takeover attacks. And government agencies, targets for espionage and data breaches. Now, if you are a company who's looking for a solution against these bad actors, the first thing that come into your mind is the tools and technologies, which is very important. Even as a cybersecurity hit, even I would actually think in that manner, right? The tools and technologies are very important. But we also need a partner who can implement those tools and technologies, and most importantly, the processes, and give you some financial relief throughout the solutioning journey. And also, you need a partner who can actually manage the solution that is implemented, right? So the partner is actually like a co-pilot who can navigate through your cybersecurity challenges. So Core as a partner will take care of your cybersecurity implementation in multi-cloud or hybrid environment through AI-driven tools and technologies. I mean, this includes your on-premise environment as well. Second, I think you can actually go to the next slide. So the next slide will actually talk about the role of a strategic cloud partner. As I said, so the first thing that we are actually going to do is we'll take care of a cybersecurity implementation in multi-cloud or hybrid environment. And second, to be honest, there is no ready-made solution for any cybersecurity challenges, right? Not one solution fits all. So we design the security architecture which is specific to your business sector after doing thorough assessment of your current environment. And third, the solution that we give should be a compliance-oriented solution like HIPAA, GDPR, SOX, PCI, DSS, or whatever it is as per the industry standards, right? Fourth, it should be cost-efficient solution. So we as a CSP will do your security assessment. No, it's a $0 security assessment. And also the cost that the customer is actually going to pay for the tools and technologies will also have a major relief. And the faster time to market, we actually implement those solutions 40% faster than the traditional implementation methodologies. Now, let's jump into the approach. So I hope everyone remembers the first cybersecurity facts slide that I showed were the cyber attacks and the associated cost implications due to that attack, right? I don't think those people did not have any security solutions in their environment. They have, or they had security solutions in their environment. But why there was an attack and why there was an impact at the time of the attack, even though they had security solutions in their environment? There are gaps in the conventional detection method, right? There are some gaps in the conventional detection method, which we all have to agree on. First, the threat actors, they are actually deploying increasingly advanced techniques that bypass the conventional detection methods, right? Second, the security tools that we have cannot fully protect against social engineering attacks. The third, security teams were overwhelmed by the abundance of alerts that they are actually getting and missing the critical alerts amidst the non-critical alerts they have. I mean, human errors, right? Fourth, many organizations relied on fixed rule-based systems that were not updated frequently. And even your firewall, the traditional firewall is actually one of them. It's a fixed rule-based systems, right? This is why AI, the artificial intelligence, comes into picture, where it catches what was missed by the humans and what was not detected by the conventional detection method technologies. So here we take a layered approach. In the sense, we assess each and every layer of your IT environment, starting from network, servers, now your computing, data, users, applications, and make sure that each layers are protected with the required sets of tools and processes. If you see the application layer on the top, we use AI-powered web application firewall and DAST for API security and automated code analysis. Likewise, user layer, which is very important, as most of the time we miss this layer, right? Because we take care of network, we take care of servers, we take care of data, but we miss in this layer, the user layer, which is actually a very important layer. Every organization will implement stringent technology to protect the external threat from entering into their premise. However, they would miss to arrest the cyber attacks that would be caused through their internal users knowingly or unknowingly. That's why we use tools like Darktrace for automated threat intelligence and vulnerability remediation. So if you see the technology sets that we use for each layer, all technologies are actually AI driven. While saying that, I'm not saying that you can remove all your security folks right after implementing AI-based cybersecurity tools, right? However, you can optimize things a lot. We believe the most effective cybersecurity approach combines AI's processing power and automation with human expertise, judgment, and creativity. So we have implemented and managed such security solutions in our organization for various customers, but one among them is a customer from US. This customer is actually a manufacturing customer. They had frequent phishing attacks and no security monitoring process, and there are many unpatched systems as well. We did an assessment and then integrated 50 plus data sources in Sentinel, and also we implemented Darktrace AI for behavior anomaly detection. We automated some playbooks using ServiceNow, and that has actually reduced 70% of incident response time. And we implemented automated phishing playbooks, and 90% patch compliance was actually achieved, and 100% no MFA adoption. So that's one of the success stories that we have for cybersecurity. Thank you very much for all your patience and support. But now I will pass on this forum to Rohan, and we have some interesting session from Darktrace as well. Eric and Spencer is actually with us, and they will actually take you through some live demos and the real Darktrace, the technology behind Darktrace, right, and how it actually protects your environment. They will show it in a live manner. And thank you very much for your time. Good day, everyone.
Thanks, Rajay.
Oh,
yeah, Eric, I was just gonna pass it on to you. Thanks. Take it away.
Appreciate it, guys. I have a few slides. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I'll turn it over to Spencer after. Spencer's my SE solutions engineer here in New York and in the Northeast. So he'll spend some time actually diving into the tech. So I'll try my best to keep it high level, but I'm excited to introduce everyone to Darktrace. I think Rajesh did a great job opening discussion around AI, some context around like how the industry looks at it today, how it's impacted security, and how it's evolved the actual technology that we implement today. Also the need for a good cloud partner. Korcomptenz is a very key partner for us, for me specifically. I've been at Darktrace for about 2 years. I'm one of our kind of account executives in the Northeast region. So I work closely with them for a lot of my kind of mid to large enterprise customers here. So, but yeah, excited to dive deeper into Darktrace today, how our 10,000 customers can feel easier about their ability to like overcome security attacks and more generally reduce their risk surface. So I like to break down Darktrace and where we started, like a little bit about our AI-based approach, and that's kind of why people know about Darktrace, and why, and specifically where customers deploy us and some of the specific use cases to the security platform we have. So the company started in 2013 by a group of mathematicians in Cambridge. These were not security professionals. We are now considered the first company to deploy AI in cybersecurity. So take it back to 2013. It was not a time where AI was a very hot button topic. And they've developed an AI, and within its first evolution was used to detect anomalies and threats into a company's network. So what was interesting about this AI, it took a completely unsupervised approach, which was different from other AI applications at the time. So essentially, the AI doesn't have any help, any predefined engine to train the AI to do what was asked. Instead, the AI took what is called a self-learning approach, kind of a patented Darktrace line, and began to learn everything about what makes an environment unique. The longer the Darktrace AI sat there and learned, it developed what we call a pattern of life, essentially what makes a business or whichever environment we're looking at normal. And essentially, the more context it has to understand what is normal, the more context it has to understand what is not normal, and which proves to be very valuable. So in the first testing of the solution was used to locate straight away what is normal activity in an organization's IT network. So discerning normal versus non-normal behavior. The revelation was that it could be used to highlight any potential indicators of compromise, security attacks affecting IT networks, especially at a time where on-prem locating your data locally was extremely prevalent. So within that application itself, pointing out things like insider threats, ransomware, malware, crypto mining, DNS attacks. So, I mean, as you'll see on the slide here, it's obviously scaled a lot. This AI has been used as a form to be extended across multiple IT environments. But as we've developed, we've continued to patent a lot of our AI applications. But we'll talk more about why that AI-based approach was very important then and why it's still important today. So I'd like to take a step back, talk about where the market is today, how companies are leveraging security technology. So starting on the left here, if you think about an enterprise organization, their security stack can be comprised of 30+ point solutions. It could be, an email gateway, an additional email filter, SIM, EDR, firewall, different types of training, awareness campaigns, vulnerability management. These are all what's considered point of solutions. You may have a SIM that will help consolidate that, but it doesn't necessarily improve the individual performance of each of those solutions. So they lack any ability to have any like pre and post alert context and communicate across to each other. So, and even with AI being a hot button issue, many other vendors still leverage what is known across their customer environment. So those models can be useful, but there are some pitfalls to that. I'll be discussing that in my next slide. But typically, novel threats, zero-day attacks, they've never been seen before. The next zero-day attack, you know, no one has seen that if it could hit the market tomorrow. So it often leaves you in a vulnerable position, can be undetected. And XDR, it remains very prevalent, but IT security leaders are trying to move away from that. And the primary reason is that XDRs do require humans to investigate, advise, and take remedial action against threats. So without saying we need to take humans out of security, there's a lot of human error there, and we're not perfect. So needing AI to kind of be there is very important. And the problem with AI today is it still uses supervised machine learning. What can that lead to? It can lead to data poisoning, lacking those technologies, the ability to detect novel threats, leading to many false positives. And also bad threat actors are using advanced tech like generative AI to scale the attacks that they couldn't do years ago, and then also using general adversarial networks to defeat some of those models, given their tendency to produce like repeatable outcomes. So Darktrace, however, we take a business-centric approach. We learn exclusively from your data and are immune from large-scale data poisoning. Therefore, it's completely bespoke to your business. So we believe that security solutions should not be a one-size-fits-all, and there should be like different patterns of behavior that can be seen as anomalous or dangerous in one environment, but can be completely normal in another. So by utilizing this approach, we will drive down false positives, alerts to your organization, and only provide you context into the most anomalous behavior. So just introducing the Darktrace active AI security platform here, as you've seen. And as I've said before, we started as just a network detection response company. That product still happens to be one of our best products today, is so widely used by the market today. But teams need to go beyond like the legacy approaches, shift an approach where customer data is the primary focus. I'm excited to turn it over to Spencer soon to dive into the tech, what the applications on those platform products do look like, and show you our world-class UI. But this new approach is what customers are looking for. It begins with that patented self-learning AI, essentially learning specific business context to understand what's normal about your communication, your people, your locations there on the bottom of the screen. And the core platform includes the coverage across email, which is called Darktrace Email. It's the #1 rated email security solution in Gartner today. And then also your network, cloud, identity, and OT SCADA systems. So it includes real-time detection, autonomous response, and also a cyber AI analyst that essentially does automated investigation. So in addition to the detection and response, we have some cross-platform products, includes the proactive exposure management. We have an ASM tool and also an incident response tool. So, and those cross-platform solutions are actually very effective for our customers, or especially our longtime customers, in helping them be more proactive in their security approach, or like other outside factors, compliance mandates, cyber insurance, and also even dealing with a security incident firsthand. So driving the need for extended modules and having the telemetry across all. But lastly, in my next slide here is kind of like the 3 major use cases why somebody would want to work with Darktrace. Somebody would want to have Darktrace security located in their environment. You can expect these key things: detection and response against all threats, known, unknown, novel, the zero-day threats keeping people up at night. SolarWinds and WannaCry, when it struck in 2017 and 2020, investigations showed that Darktrace has actually been notifying those customers of anomalous behaviors several months before other solutions were able to alert on those signs of a possible breach. So this comes back to being there for the most complex novel threats. And with our AI analyst, automated triage, acting as like a human level security analyst. So we'll help streamline your security operations, make alerts make sense, and not just bog you down with alerts. And lastly, with cloud security and some of our cross-platform solutions, we can help expose vulnerabilities, remove gaps in your workflow, and fulfill some compliance needs. That's it for my spiel. I'm excited, hopefully, to answer some questions afterwards, but I will turn it over to Spencer, and this is where we turn some heads and get a look into the UI. I think we'll start. It's going to be a shorter demo than normal, but we'll dive into the key points. And I think we're going to start with the network platform, Darktrace network, and we'll go from there. But so I guess Spencer, without further ado, I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Yeah, this is going to move pretty quick because I know we don't have the most time, and there's a lot that we want to cover today. So we're going to start with the network demo and then move into email and cloud, just to give you a picture of those three really core products that we offer as part of our platform. At our most basic, what a network deployment looks like is a physical appliance that we ship out and sit off your core switch to span all the traffic. So that's east-west and north-south. And what this allows us to do is begin to profile all the devices, clients, servers, as well as user profiles within your organization. So we're going to start to understand what those devices are, how they communicate, using what protocols, at what times, with what other devices, and then build out what we call a natural pattern of life for that device. And we can see this visualized a little bit here, where we've got all the connections coming into the organization over the filtered time range. And then each of those connections is being evaluated for, how anomalous is this? How far away does this deviate from those natural patterns of life that we had previously observed from this device or group of devices? Then what we're doing is we're taking an agentic process. We call this the AI analyst, and we're overlaying the MITRE attack framework and performing some initial triage. So we're looking at these anomalous connections and we're seeing, do they present any threat to your organization? And if so, what is that threat? So we're going to be filtering down from these really basic mathematical anomalies into what we consider incidents and then critical incidents, performing that triage the entire way. So really cutting down what you and your security team have to look at, to sift through, to work through, to only the most critical events going on in your organization. That is then going to be displayed down at the bottom in what we call the threat tray. This is actually an AI analyst incident about an insider threat. This is a real example that we have scrubbed for demo purposes. I really like using the insider threat example because it tends to be one of the more subtle anomalies that organizations face. It tends to have fewer strong IOCs. There aren't bad domains or IPs that you can point to in a lot of these cases where you can say, yeah, a legacy system or my rules and signatures would have caught this. So that's why I really like pulling this one up. What we see when we open an AI analyst incident is a timeline of the events. So you can see that over here on the left-hand side. With each event, a human readable summary of what did Darktrace find, why is it flagging it, what is potentially anomalous, and then some IP information. So, who's the perpetrating device, what did they touch, what did they impact, are we seeing any credentials that we can pull out, and just perform that initial triage, that initial lift to give you guys the context of, here's what's happening in a nutshell. Now, if there's anything else you need to do, you'll have the tools at your disposal to find that within this single pane of glass. The antagonist here is a guy named Henry Jones. In real life, he had been passed up for a promotion and was going to leave the organization. And before he did so, was trying to collect as much data as possible to take with him. So the first event that we see here is that his device is accessing what we believe to be a possible unencrypted password file on the finance server. And in a vacuum, this might be totally fine. There could be many reasons that Henry Jones needs to do this for work. It's just not something that we've come to understand for his natural behavior yet. He doesn't typically access this file. So very simply, what we're going to do is just alert it up, say, this is kind of strange. We'll let you guys know about it, but we're not going to do anything yet. We're going to continue to monitor his activity with the understanding that we have something a little bit strange going on to begin with. What happens next is almost immediately afterwards. You can see it's a span of, just under, just over 10 minutes there before the next activity, where we're seeing him downloading close to 16 gigs of data from a backup server. So that's a pretty substantial amount of data. We can actually see which files he interacted with. Within the model breach event log, you're able to see the filtered logs of why Darktrace found this anomalous, have that evidence to have as backup when you're investigating activity, but also some clarification of why is this strange, why is Darktrace alerting me to this? And if you look at this graph, I think it's a really neat way of understanding that. In the previous couple of weeks before this activity, he had never transferred any data over this port. And now all of a sudden we're close to 16 gigs in and out over the course of under an hour. So that is really the definition of anomaly. And combined with the access of that unencrypted password file, this kind of activity from the same person goes from being a little bit strange to frankly a little bit alarming. So this is where Darktrace Respond and our autonomous response function comes into play. What we're going to do is take a look at the specific activity we're seeing and try and protect around it, be incredibly surgical in what we're doing. So if we were in an autonomous mode, we would be putting blocks on Henry Jones connections to both the finance server and the backup server over that specific port. So being as precise as possible to stop the activity. And once again, even now, after those two examples of data collection would be the right MITRE attack framework to match this to. Even now, it's very possible that there is a legitimate business case. But what we're saying is we're going to take a slightly risk-averse way of doing it. We're going to block specifically those connections, allow for other activity, but notify you and your team and buy you guys time. And that's essentially what we're doing with Respond, is we're blocking the bad behavior and buying you guys time to investigate, remediate, and clear it if need be. What this person realizes then is that they've been logged out of a couple of network systems. They've been locked out. So they're going to go off the network. They're going to go into the cloud, into Microsoft 365, see what kind of resources they can grab from OneDrive, SharePoint, maybe it's stuff in the inbox that they're going to download. And we can take a look at those logs again here. And what Darktrace is saying in this case is that really what we're finding anomalous is the volume of which this is being downloaded, especially given the prior activity. It's all consistent with this narrative that there might be some data collection before a final exfiltration of that data. So we can do a couple things with Respond. The first thing we can do is just force a log out. And what that does is challenge the user to sign back in again. We want to make sure that the person signed in really is who they say they are. So we'll log them out, make sure that's not a stolen session, stolen credentials, things of that nature. And then as we see them go right back towards those resources and continue to download, we're actually going to upgrade the action that we take and disable that user until your team can put eyes on what is going on with Henry Jones altogether. Finally, we've got Henry actually taking the device off the network. So he left the physical network entirely and began trying to transfer that data to WeTransfer, which obviously is not a malicious site in itself, but once again, strange, unusual, and not something that we expect to see from this device, especially given all of this activity. So we're actually able to communicate with a sensor that we can put on the device itself, communicate directly with the OS layer, and block this activity before he's able to get that data outbound. That is the very quick whistle-stop tour of what we look at when we look at the network demo. I think a couple of takeaways before we hop into some of those other products is what we've shown effectively is 4 different parts of anomalous activity. And by themselves, yes, they absolutely would have generated an alert in the UI, but in a vacuum, you wouldn't necessarily have gotten excited about it. But what the machine learning has done is it said, all this activity seems to be related. It's coming from the same user or the same device. all of this activity seems to be an escalating set of behaviors. And because of that, number one, we can group them together. So for your security engineers, that makes it much easier to investigate them, and it's much more accessible in terms of triaging this activity. But it also plays a part in how we tune and configure that respond capability. If it was just isolated individual events, like we may not have started that logout process. But because we saw that escalating pattern, we can start to kick in with some stricter actions. And what it's worth understanding, like as Eric said throughout his presentation, like the whole premise of Darktrace is trying to understand what your network looks like what your users normally do. And we're trying to understand that day-to-day pattern of activity that's normal for you guys. And fundamentally, like we're not about trying to find attackers, because when it comes to trying to find attackers, there's always a risk that there's some new IP, bad IPs, bad domains, something that you didn't know was bad, or there's a new threat vector that you haven't got a profile of from your vendor. So there's always a little bit of gap in your knowledge and understanding. So from our perspective, rather than trying to look for things that look like an attacker, we use our machine learning to look for things that don't look like the defenders. And that gives us a much better chance of identifying activity, which the rest of the world has no previous knowledge of. So that could be a novel attack, that could be a 0-day, or even just like a really small threat actor that no one has a very good profile on, simply by the fact that it doesn't look like normal day-to-day behavior for your organization. So normally I would love to take questions here. We are going to motor on. I know there's some time for questions at the end. So if you have any, please keep them in mind and we'll address them during the Q&A portion. We're going to hop now to the email demo. Eric mentioned this, Rohan mentioned this as well. You know, these are all technologies that are actively being used by Korcomptenz. I'm biased, I'm on the email team. I'm such a huge fan of this solution. And I think if you've only really seen gateways and have experience with gateways, it's definitely something that's worth checking out for you guys because of how different the approach is that we take and how much administrative burden we can ease off you guys and your security teams, especially those dealing with email security. So the approach we're taking is fundamentally the same, right? Except in the email space, we're looking at the users within your environment and the people that they talk to. So everyone in your tenant that has an email address and everyone that they communicate with. So in the Korcomp one, Darktrace is going to be an external domain. Eric is going to be an external person that's profiled by their Darktrace deployment. And what we're looking at is, what kind of attachments are sent, what kind of links, what language do they use, like what's the sentiment and topic of their messages. And we do this so that we can pick up on deviations from that normal. And that allows us to be really tuned into business email compromise, vendor compromise, and right now, I think very importantly, cloud platform abuse, because we have an idea of the context in which messages come in. And that context is super important to Darktrace. And I would say one of our major differentiators from a threat detection standpoint is the fact that we're able to incorporate that into how we treat an email. Of course, what's also important is what's the potential payload? What are the suspicious properties of that message? How can we potentially categorize them? Does it look like it's credential harvest? Does it look like malware? Is it strictly social engineering? What are we seeing in the email that makes us think not only is this strange from a contextual standpoint, but it's actually maybe something that's malicious and needs to be dealt with. And when we talk about what Darktrace can do, we can do a number of things, right? We can hold a message, which is effectively a quarantine, pull it out of the environment altogether. Or if it's one property of a message that we really don't like, that we find very strange, say it's a macro that for whatever reason is really anomalous, it looks like it's potentially dangerous, we can convert an attachment to a safe to view format or strip it. And if it's a link that we don't like, we can rewrite or lock those links to either lead to a second level of checks before we allow users to proceed or block them entirely. And what this allows is, it means that we don't have to make a binary decision. It doesn't have to be yes or no, good email or bad email. We can take a more targeted stance and say, The only thing that we're worried about, the only potential payload is right here. Let's take care of that and continue to deliver this email, because it'll drive down any business disruptions. It'll limit the number of false positives that administrative teams need to deal with. Now, once again, there's plenty of other stuff here. I know I'm running up against time already and we have a lot to get through. So if you see any of these tabs that look interesting and you've got a question around it, please feel free to ask. But we do want to hop into the logs really quickly just to show you what a Darktrace threat detection might look like. And I really like this example. You'll see this is the log section, which would be a repository of all messages going to your organization, not just the ones that Darktrace found suspicious, but an entire repository. In this demo, we have a few picked out that are good examples of different kinds of detections, and they're all scored from 0 to 100 based on how anomalous they are. But to be very clear, all these messages are ones that Darktrace would have held, blocked from the organization's inbox, and they are all legitimate. They've all just been scrubbed to include the names of our dummy corporations here. So this message and any message in Darktrace, you've got the anomaly indicators, which do the same thing as you saw on the network side. It just tells you, why did we find it strange? Why are we blocking this message? You've got the subject up at the top, the sender, this Jana Winger at Health Corp, and the recipient, the internal person, Kate Wilson at Holdings Inc. A couple of things we can do as an administrator is you're able to preview that email. So you're able to get a look at what the body of that message is right from here, as well as take a look at any of the links, what their final destinations are, and attachments as well. So you're able to view all the content directly from the UI right here. But what I want to focus on, and the reason why I really like this message, is because this is an email account takeover. What we're saying when we flag something as email account takeover is we're pretty sure that this is a legitimate business email address. And in this case, it's actually one that we know. It's an established correspondent. We have correspondence with Jana Winger herself, as well as with her domain, healthcorp.com. And yet, based on what we're seeing in the message and based off what we know so far from Jana Winger and her correspondence, this is very out of character. And we believe that her account may no longer belong to her. Why this presents a challenge for some of the other vendors in the space, some of the legacy gateways, is a few things. One, it is that legitimate address. This email is not going to be on a block list. Maybe a few days later, once Jana Winger realizes there might be some amendment and something that says it was temporarily compromised, but it is a legit address. It has been used for a long time for safe purposes. So it's not going to end up on any threat intel or OSINT lists that you can find. And same thing with SharePoint. And this is the real main point I want to make, is that those email security solutions that rely on block lists, they're falling behind a little bit, because these third-party systems that are agnostic, they'll host anything until they realize this is safe or not safe. They'll host anything, and they're generally pretty reputable. So people are abusing these systems to send in this case, what ends up being a fake Microsoft login page, because rather than redirecting to Microsoft Online, this is actually what's hosted on the end of this page. And typically these messages are interacted with within a few hours. And if SharePoint gets it, it's 4 or 5 days after the fact, and they'll eventually block it, but the harm is already done. So you have nothing in this message that's going to end up on a block list until way after the impact has already been made. And Darktrace is able to pick up on this just by saying, this doesn't make sense for this person to be sending us this message in this fashion. So again, it really is about marrying the context in which a message comes in with the content within it. And I'll stop there. I do have cloud. I realize I'm going massively over.
Do you hear me, Spencer?
Go ahead, Eric.
I was wondering how, I think it'd be helpful to know, where does this email system, Darktrace email, how does it compare to a gateway in terms of its deployment?
Yeah, so we're not in line like a gateway would be. And I probably should have mentioned that. It's a really good question. We are parallel to Microsoft 365. So the message comes into the org, we get a copy of it, and we make our distinction, what should happen to this message. while it's being processed by Microsoft, so we get there before it's delivered to any inboxes. And that's really how we deploy. It also gives us a much better view of what users are doing with messages. And that's one of the advantages we have of being deployed in that sense, is we get to see how and when users interact with their mail and what kind of things they do want to respond to and what kind of things they don't want to respond to. I think this was mentioned at the top of the call when we were just chatting, but it does a tremendous job outside of like security in cleaning up inboxes for the organization, leading to a lot of time savings. But yeah, as far as deployment, we can ingest via journaling or API, and then we'll action via API before things reach the inbox. It's a very good question. I'm gonna do a even faster quick look at cloud because again, at its core, it is quite similar to our network deployment. Except the way we deploy is going to be typically with like CloudTrail logs, NetFlow logs. Obviously, it's different whether it's Azure or AWS, but flow logs, CloudTrail audit logs, and then asset enumeration. And we'll touch back on that in a sec. But we're performing that same threat detection process. Is this normal? Is this not normal? But with the understanding that there are cloud systems, so some of the functionality should be a little bit different. We have in this case a payment processor that's getting an incoming SSH that we're finding to be out of the ordinary. It's not something that we would expect from this device. So we're taking that same process to understand in real time what is potentially being targeted within your cloud architectures, within your cloud environments. We can then pivot in really easily to that specific architecture, and you're able to see it visualized. This is how the asset enumeration works. It allows us to see a breakdown of, what does it look like? What can interact with one another within your cloud environment? Who has the right permissions to interact with what? And what potential threats does that pose? So over on the left-hand side, you can see the actual model alerts, so things that we would consider to be ongoing active behavior that warrants your attention, but also misconfigurations, which we can feed directly into your CI/CD pipeline to ensure that your devs, as they're working, as they're building out their cloud, they're not leaving too many gaps, too many holes in the fence. So a little bit is about that like posture management, misconfiguration protection, and then also that real-time threat detection, what's happening within my environment. And the last really cool thing I want to show is we're also able to say, based off of who has access to what are some ways where bad actors could go from outside the system to your most critical assets, and how can we protect against that? What are the top risk paths based on what Darktrace is finding in terms of the connections that are being made, and like how exposed is your organization or each individual architecture. You also have a quick view at like compliance structures. How compliant are we? I know that's something that Rajesh mentioned earlier as being important for a lot of Korcomp customers, is working towards those compliance standards. There's always room to improve and get closer to an ultimate goal where you are as compliant as can be with these structures. So that is the incredibly fast tour of cloud. There's plenty more that I would like to get to. You have a ton of visibility on both AWS and Azure that you're able to see married into one single pane of glass. So once again, that offer still stands. If there's anything you would have liked to see more of, anything you want to dig into, we do have a short Q&A, but we can also follow up with the Korcomp team if you want a further discussion that's more relevant to your organization. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Eric for a couple final things from us.
Thank you, Spencer. I hope there are some questions. I know that was a lot, but just to touch on how prospective customers will engage with Darktrace from this point forward. Usually start with some sort of proof of value. You can choose to start with email, identity, network, cloud, depending on what your needs are, or all of the above. Outside of network, the POCs are fully virtual and take under an hour to spin up, and is a good way to kind of test your current system, your current setup, and get a taste of Darktrace. So on the email side, and on the cloud side and on the identity side, it's just fully API based installation. So yeah, most customers and prospective customers take advantage of the POVs. I guess Rajesh, you can talk about some of the key takeaways here.
Yeah, I think the key takeaways for all the people who actually joined from different business sectors, I think we need a clear cybersecurity strategy to build a secure environment. Architecting is actually important. And then practical insights on using AI for proactive threat defense. And then we have to actually understand the business value of integrating cloud and cybersecurity operations. And then we have to actually expect some measurable business impact through smarter cloud and security operations. So the immediate next steps is this webinar, or the attenders of this webinar is actually eligible for a free migration offer to kickstart your your security transformation. So with that, we are actually ending here. In case if anyone has any questions, we are more than happy to answer that.
Yeah, we do have some questions in the chat. I'm just going to look at that. And don't worry if you did have a question and we don't get to it, we will follow up through email in order to answer that for you guys. The first question that we have here says, how does Darktrace compare or differ from a SIEM tool?
Yeah, I'll take that question. That's a very common question. I didn't really get to touch on the integrations much with Darktrace, but in the main threat visualizer UI that Spencer showed at first on the network side, if a customer is looking to consolidate their security stack and essentially kind of one pane of glass, making sure they're not jumping between each point solution, customers may use a SIEM. Or sometimes SIEMs may be used from a compliance perspective, but Darktrace can act in a way where, that offer those same consolidation, single pane of glass capabilities. We offer free integrations for all our customers. In the first, 3 to 12 months of a customer deployment, we'll integrate their EDR systems, their firewalls, any other sort of zero trust deployments that they have to ensure that all logs are kind of fed into one platform, and there is some telemetric benefits across the platforms as well. So if you're looking for the enhanced detection capabilities with Darktrace and some of the consolidation, you may want to look at Darktrace as an alternative to a SIEM, but it just depends on kind of the robust nature of your stack and if a SIEM is needed. So great question.
Great. The next one that I have here, how do you deal with spam bombing? Can I transfer my existing policies from my gateway around spam bombing to Darktrace? I think, Spencer, you're the email expert here.
Yeah, no, I'll field that. It's a really good question, and something that we're coming across a lot right now seems to be the flavor of the month is spam bombing, followed by like an external Teams call. So the good news is that while absolutely you can transfer your policies, like we're incredibly configurable, you have full access to the model editor. What I will say is there's a stat that's actually getting published next month that under 25% of our email customers have to create custom models. I know for a fact that Korcomp hasn't, and everything's working great. That being said, it's all at your disposal, like all the configurability. For spam bombing, we'll do this automatically. Like we'll determine based off of what that end user's inbox is looking like, whether or not they're facing spam bombing, and if they are, we'll deal with those incoming messages differently. So what that looks like in practice is, we know that no one is signing up for more than 4 accounts on different websites over the course of less than 2 hours, right? That's something that we can fundamentally understand. And then we'll take that understanding and say, these messages coming in, do we have history with them? Are they human generated or are they machine generated? And we'll clean it up that way so that we're a lot stricter on those inboxes. They aren't getting flooded. They're able to focus on their work, but also most importantly, they're secure. They're not vulnerable to what typically is a follow-up social engineering attack, where they get a Teams call saying, hey, I know your inbox is flooded. I'm from the help desk. Let's put this on your computer and I'll help you out. Because that really is the flavor of the month. So whoever's asking that, I hope you didn't have an experience with that. But if you have, then it's a great thing to look at Darktrace for, because we're very effective in dealing with spam bombing.
Yeah, and even speaking from my personal experience, made my email so much cleaner, made my life so much easier as well. So thanks for that, Spencer. And this will have to be the last question. Unfortunately, we're a little bit over time, but this says, what makes Korcompentz's approach to cloud and cybersecurity stand out from other providers in the market? I think Rajesh, you can talk about this.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think I covered a little bit during my presentation, but let me add some more points here, right? We don't use any ready-made solutions. We may mirror some best practices that we use for other customers of the same business sector. However, we assess the customer's environment thoroughly and make sure that the solution suits their business needs. Second, we have premium partnership with major vendors like Darktrace, CrowdStrike, Microsoft, and AWS, right? Where we have the leverage of bringing their own architects on the call and build an architecture for our customers through our partner benefit program, because we believe the right architecture matters for any cybersecurity solutions, right? Third, from the financial perspective, when it comes to cloud migration and modernization, 80 to 90% of the migration cost can be waived off through partner funding. The assessment and discovery for cybersecurity and cloud migrations is completely on core, and we don't charge anything to the customer. We also give a 1 month hypercare support after migration or implementation of your cybersecurity solution or cloud solution. And we do any implementation projects with 40% more faster than other providers through our out-of-the-box migration tools and technologies, right? So this, I believe, differs us from other vendors. Yeah, I think I answered the question. Yeah.
Great, cool. So that's actually all the time we have for questions for right now, but we have a couple in the chat that we will email a response to. So make sure to keep your eyes peeled for that. Great. So thanks everybody. We've come to the end of this webinar. Went a little bit over, but we really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. We will be in touch through email to circulate those exclusive offers. And thanks also to our panelists. Thanks, Rajesh, Spencer, and Eric for taking the time to meet today. And I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Rohan. Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Good day. Bye.